Guys, welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. This is going to be a very good episode. I think you'll really like this episode with the Griego family. And we're going to be talking to Jennifer Griego, Bob and Carol Griego about cystic fibrosis, and going to be talking about Jen's completion of her Grand Slam of North American Wild Sheep. Before we get into that, I want to thank the sponsors of this podcast. I want to thank GoHunt.com, my friend Cody Nelson of 20 plus years. He is the glassing guru. He's the optics authority. He's the optics manager at GoHunt.com in the gear shop. If you have any optical needs at all, whether it be binos, spotting scopes, tripods, rifle scopes, what have you, you can give him a call at 702-847-8747. That's extension 2, or email him at optics@gohunt.com. Now, he has promised me that he will take care of the J. Scott Outdoors podcast listener. So if you just mention my name, he is going to take care of you, and he's already been doing that for several months now. I want to thank GoHunt.com for their sponsorship. I also want to remind you that if you go to gohunt.com/JScott, you're going to get a $50 Go Hunt Gear Shop gift card. And Go Hunt Insider, it is the best Western hunting resource out there. And if you want to search draw odds on all these Western states, on all these application periods coming up, that is the best Western hunting resource out there. So make sure to check them out and get $50 back on a gift card by going to gohunt.com/JScott. I also want to thank Kuiu.com. That's Kuiu, Kuiu, ultralight hunting. You can check out all of the gear that Kuiu makes. It's all the gear that I wear on my hunts at Kuiu.com. Thank them for their sponsorship. Also, CanyonCoolers.com, based right out of Flagstaff, Arizona. Use the JScott19 promo code. You're going to get a 10% discount on all orders. Phonescope.com, use the JScott19 promo code to get 10% off on all orders. And last but not least, OnXMaps.com, use the JScott19 promo code to get a 20% discount on all orders at OnXMaps.com. Guys, let's get right to this episode with the Griegos. I really appreciate your support. I appreciate your support on my Instagram account. If you want to send me a direct message, you can at JScottOutdoors, or you can send me an email, jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. Guys, thanks for your support. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. I am here in Paradise Valley, Arizona, at the home of Bob and Carol Griego, dear friends of mine. And the Griegos have kids that have been a part of my life for a long time, with Jennifer Griego, who is sitting here to my left, and Timmy Griego. We call him Gator. We call him Hammerhead. He's got a lot of nicknames. And then David Griego. And the Griego family is very dear to me. I've had a lot of great times and fun times with them hunting up on the White Mountain Apache Indian Reservation for turkeys. And seems like we've been doing it for years. And these kiddos here, I mean, I remember when we first started going, they were tiny little guys. And here we are, we're sitting in the Griego trophy room, and I'm looking around, and there's just awesome trophies, all sorts of animals and memories all over the walls, and fish, and all sorts of, sheep and elk and bears, and just awesome stuff, and turkeys. And it's going to be a fun day to talk about a bunch of things. One of them is how a family like you guys have the hunting tradition, and it passes down to the kiddos, and you guys do such a great job of, hunting as a family, and you can see it ever since I've met you guys. You guys are so much fun, and the tradition of hunting, you're here, beautiful house in Paradise Valley, and we've got archery targets in the backyard, and archery is such a big part of, I know, Bob's life, and the rest of the family loves to hunt archery and rifle and all sorts of things. And then we're also going to talk about cystic fibrosis, and we're going to bring awareness to cystic fibrosis and some of the challenges that the Griego family has had with cystic fibrosis, and all of the, but most important, the great accomplishments that Jen has been able to do with cystic fibrosis and do things that people that are of perfect health have never accomplished. So it's an amazing story. Jen, you are an inspiration to me. I say it on my Instagram page a lot, how proud of you that I am of your accomplishments. But besides the accomplishments, just the person that you are. You're just a great person. And, I think that funnels down from Bob and Carol, and seeing the example that you guys have been able to lead as parents. And so we're going to have a fun time talking on the podcast. It's going to be hard because, it seems like when we all get together, it's joking and laughing, and I'm sure we'll have some of that today. But we also have some serious topics as well. So it's going to be a fun podcast. So guys, welcome.
Great. Thanks,
Thank you,
Jay.
Thank you for having us, Jay.
I kind of want to start out this podcast, and we've got Bandit. Our dog here is he's roaming around. So if you hear some noises, it's probably Bandit. And
At least we're going to blame Bandit.
yeah, exactly. Bob, starting with you, and we're going to get a little background on the Griego family. You're from Arizona here. I believe you went to Shadow Mountain High School.
Correct.
But you have a very successful practice here in town. Would you talk a little bit about your upbringing as far as, ASU and high school, and then your career as a doctor, and kind of give a little background on yourself?
Sure. I'm a native Arizonan. My dad was born in Prescott, Arizona, and I grew up in Scottsdale, like Sweetwater and 60th Street. Went to Shadow Mountain High School and then ASU, where I met Carol. Say hi, Carol.
Hi.
We were both pre-med at the time. I went into biomedical engineering to get into medical school, and then went to U of A medical school after that.
So you went to ASU undergrad, and then you finished at U of A, and then when you got out of U of A, then you started a practice. Tell us a little bit about what you do on a day-to-day basis, and maybe it's changed a little bit in the last few years, but getting out of medical school, what has been your specialty, and talk a little bit about that.
Right. So I'm a dermatologist by training, and after that training, I did skin cancer surgery as training. And so my practice is just the treatment of skin cancer. So I went to Shadow Mountain High School, went to Arizona State University, majored in biomedical engineering, where I met the love of my life, Carol, and her gymnastic stuff. We were both pre-med. And then from there I went to the U of A for medical school, and then Baylor for residency and my surgical fellowship in Pittsburgh. So now in my practice, I just do the skin cancer surgery. Great patients. It's really a wonderful career. Patients, have a 99.5% cure rate for the skin cancers. People are not dying of them. You cut them out and repair them. You do the cosmetic work to fix them, and it's just a fun career. And most of my patients are farmers or ranchers or hunters or fishermen, so I get a chance to sit and talk to them.
And do you have people come from all over the country to come to your clinic here? Go ahead and tell people where you're located.
Quite a bit, yeah. My practice is in Mesa, Arizona, off the 101 and Southern, and I've been there for moved in there in 99, so 19 years in that location, and get patients from all over, mostly Arizona, but the whole Southwest.
He does more Mohs surgery than anybody else in the country, so he's a very busy guy and very successful with his repairs, too. A lot of Mohs surgeons just take the excision, but it's in the reconstruction that's really what Bob enjoys doing and is really, really very good at it.
It's really good. Like, I see pictures, and it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Who would have guessed the Valley of the Sun would have a lot of skin cancer? And there was an article that I wrote that was in Western Hunter last year that, if anybody's interested in that, as far as warning signs for skin cancer, what to look out for, I think that's pretty helpful for people to help recognize what's a problem on their skin.
And Bob, in general, just a general, what you would tell people to prevent that? Is it cover up, wear sunscreen? Is there anything else to that?
Yeah, try to avoid the sun in the middle of the day from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and wear an SPF 30 or higher sunscreen. Make sure that you wear a wide brim hat. We really need to get in the habit of putting your sunscreen on every day. because it's a lifetime accumulation. It's not just the sunburns. Unfortunately, the most fun things in the world are outdoors, but that's where the sun damage comes from. So, got to protect yourself.
And so you went to ASU, and then you went to U of A. But I've got to ask you, are you a Wildcat or are you a Sun Devil?
Well, Jay, I can walk upright, so that makes me a Sun Devil.
Very good answer.
You know, I was born and raised in Phoenix, and I always followed ASU, and I also wanted U of A to win until they were playing ASU, until I lived in Tucson for 6 years for medical school residency and a year of research, and no, I prefer the Wildcats lose.
Me and you both.
Yeah, and did you get a hold of Brian Remza after the last basketball game?
No, but I've screenshotted it, and I plan to for sure. Because I don't care what sport it is. Whenever U of A beats us in the golf or whatever, he sends it hey, they beat it so I need to get some mileage out of this because he underwater backgammon that we just beat.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah, the U of A fans tend to remind Sun Devil fans all the time when they win, so. Yeah. We need to do a better job of reminding them when they lose.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Fun.
And Carol, you yourself are a doctor as well, and you and Bob met, and I got to hear the story last night of how you and Bob met, and it was a really cute story. You were a gymnast, and tell us a little bit about yourself growing up here in Arizona. And, were you a hunter when you grew up, or is this something when you met Bob that you, fell in love with hunting yourself?
Well, I'm a city girl. My family came from Chicago. We moved here in 1973 with my mom and dad and my 5 siblings. So obviously my early years were in Chicago, and then moving here to Phoenix when I was about 10 years old, I got involved in gymnastics pretty much right away. A neighbor of mine was a gymnast, and so I loved it. So spent most of my free time doing gymnastics, and went to ASU and was grateful to be on the #1 ranked ASU gymnastics team, and it was a great experience. Made great friends and had some great experiences there. And Bob and I met towards the end of that, my last year, and Bob was a favorite in the gym when he would come and watch. My coach actually wouldn't let most of the boyfriends in, but he liked Bob, so that was...
Not into the locker room, though, Jay. They had some rules.
So that was fun, and but, Bob never really started his hunting interests until well into med school. So my exposure to hunting and outdoors was very limited. I mean, I was in the gym most of the time, and then studying pre-med, and obviously my aspiration to be a doctor started pretty young in my high school, early college years. So my days are pretty occupied, but once we got to med school at U of A together, Bob met some other people that were outdoorsy, and Bob likes, he's kind of artistic in that he likes to do photography, and so when he got involved in hunting, he just wanted to go with his buddy and take some pictures, and so that hobby started off in med school, just slowly, and then Bob doesn't do anything halfway, so it didn't take long for him to be completely impassioned by the sport of hunting, and really wasn't until our kids were born, obviously many years later. Bob and I have been together for a very long time. Gosh, we met, age 21, and we had to go through all of our training before we actually got married, so we dated for 7-8 years before we were married. And
I thought you were still 29.
Yeah, and I'm still 29 and waiting.
She still looks 29.
Thank you, Jay. So the hunting, Bob would go on hunting trips, and occasionally, early part of our marriage, it was like, gosh, you're going for a week? You're going for 2 weeks? It's like, what the heck?
Yeah.
That's a long time.
How can it be that hard to kill something?
Comes home with nothing. I'm like, okay, that was a waste. He said, no, it wasn't. It was great.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, all right. So it was a bit of a transition to, your husband to be gone, and obviously I was working and busy, but I didn't understand the sport of hunting, and I really didn't have an interest, but I knew it was his passion, and he came home happy whether he got an animal or not. So it was something that I wanted to continue to support because it was such a happy place for him to be. And it wasn't until we had our children, and they were old enough to go outdoors, and Bob was like, each kid's going to get their hunting license or their hunter safety license at age 10, and each kid did that, and then Bob's like, well, Carol, you need to learn how to handle a gun. I'm like, no, I don't. I don't need to.
So funny. She never had any interest at all in hunting until the kids started doing it.
That's cool.
But she's so competitive that she
Sure.
couldn't be outdone by the kids. So when they started being successful, she was like, "Oh, I can do that. I can do that." And so we started out with an antelope hunt for you, and
Which was a disaster.
you got your antelope, but got a lot of running around too, chasing the antelope before you could get your shot. But
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun, and we had a lot of fun together. But the kids, once they got into it, they took off, and it's been so much fun mentoring them to get them set up and practicing. We practiced with pellet guns, shooting balloons and stuff like that. And man, they were lethal. I don't think you guys missed a shot at the beginning. Y'all went like 10 for 10. It was incredible.
You know, Jen, it's cool to hear your parents talk about, you know, your mom starting to hunt when you guys came around. And just so I give a chronological, so we've got David, he's the oldest, and he's now in college back in Nebraska,
Yep,
correct?
19 years old.
And he's
Creighton University.
he's also following in the footsteps of both of you guys in the medical. He wants to be in the medical profession at Creighton. And we've got Timmy, who is down at Brophy and playing football and just a great kid. And then we have Jennifer is the middle,
Yep.
and Timmy is the youngest. And Jennifer is at Notre Dame.
Yes.
And Jennifer likes to play tennis,
Yeah.
but she is also a huntress.
Yes. Takes up
And-
most of my time.
That's what's going to be so fun about this podcast is I've known you since you were literally this tall, it feels like, and to see, you know, your own hunting career and the things that you've been able to accomplish is pretty amazing. I would ask you, Jennifer, at what point in time did you realize that hunting was something that you actually really enjoyed?
Well, so I get that question a lot from my friends and stuff, and I grew up around it, so I've just kind of, it's always been like what I knew. But then obviously kind of like my mom, like my brother started getting into it, it just became a big competition. And so we all loved it, and like we'd go out with our dad and we'd like be little kids like with our little pellet guns or BB guns and like shooting squirrels and stuff. And I don't know, I just kind of grew up around it, so I've always like loved it because it's just been what I do with my family.
Yeah, and what's fun is I hear you say competition, and we had game night here at the Griego household, so I got to see the competition, and it's not a competition like, oh, I want to like drive someone into the ground and beat them, although there may be some of that. It's more of like the Griego family has a great sense of humor and great sense of being able to rib each other and kind of who's on top tonight, and because tomorrow night you might be on the bottom, so it's kind of a pecking order, isn't there?
Yeah, we went shooting with one of our friends, and Timmy and I were both shooting at 1,300 yards, and Timmy like. We're all like great shots. My dad taught us very well, and we're all really good shots. And Timmy just wasn't putting his body weight into the gun, and so I shot I think twice and I got it, and then he shot a couple more times, and he finally once he put his weight in he got it. But he's a great shot, and my older brother is too. But if you miss that one time, like you're never gonna forget it.
Yeah, for
And you
sure.
can put a shout out to Patrick Scroggins, who got
yeah,
you that
Pat, what a
Gunworks
dude.
rifle and taught you how to shoot long range, and
Yes.
it was phenomenal. Unfortunately, Timmy wasn't paying attention, didn't listen how to load the bipod, and Jennifer was just counting off his misses. Of course, she had to hold 110 inches of wind. It was really windy, and 1,300 yards is a long way. But Timmy finally got it figured out and got on the next one. But would you start calling him, Jennifer? How many shots was it?
7.
7-shot Timmy.
Yeah.
I think you started calling him James Bond in 007.
That's
shots
awesome.
to hit the target.
I always remember turkey hunting, and I mean, it seems like, I mean, I don't know, but it seems like at least 5 or 6 years, maybe more, that I've been up with you guys on the turkey hunt. And what's fun is, you know, you guys kind of all go your different directions with the guides and whatever, and it's fun when you get back at night or after a morning hunt to be like, who got the bird, who didn't,
Oh yeah. we
who
always
shot
have, like,
and missed, and
who got it
you know,
first? Who got
yeah.
the biggest?
Yeah, I mean,
we always have bets.
Yeah,
I never win.
It's
but
crazy how
Yeah.
fun it gets when the Griego clan is counting birds and counting shots and
Distance.
I remember always telling the story, so we had to start the story as, okay, so there I was.
Yeah.
and then you start your story with how the turkey ran off or whatever.
That was so funny with that. I can't remember what it was. You guys would always have a story, and I'd say, no, it's not a story unless you start out with,
So there I was.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the tradition has continued. And Jay caught on pretty quickly. I think it was the second year. Timmy or Jennifer started to say a story about their turkey hunt, and they forgot the intro, and Jay's like, wait a second, this doesn't count.
Yeah.
You have to say, so there I was first.
Exactly. Bob and Carol, I do also commend you guys on the fact that it seems like from an outside party looking in that you guys take time with each one of the children. Like I know, Bob, you go on a lot of the different trips with just one child, and you go and do that event with that kid. And there's all these adventures that you guys have shared as a family, as a cumulative group. And then there is adventures that, maybe just with Jen or just with Tim or just with David. Right. Talk a little bit about why that is, trying to maybe have some isolated time with each individual kid.
Started with David. I coached the kids in Little League and with their flag football and other school activities, but you just get so much out of experiences with your kids in the outdoors that I really wanted to prioritize taking each kid on a hunt with me individually every year. And I started with David. He was 5 on a turkey hunt I had in Arizona. And, those days are brutal. You get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you hunt. Usually you get a break after the morning hunt, but David didn't want to go back to our cabin in Greer. He wanted to stay out the whole day. So we were hunting up near Big Lake, and, he wouldn't take a nap. He didn't want to rest. He just wanted to shoot a turkey. And we were out until 10 o'clock at night by the time we got back to our cabin. And I said, Dave, why don't you just stay home tomorrow, bud? You're tired. You don't need to go with me. He's like, no, Dad, I want to go. And he was just hardcore, and we have had a bunch of different experiences, but that was his first one. And David's a tremendous hunter, just like all the kids are, but he started it all off with his passion as a kid hunting with me. And then Jennifer, her first hunt was of her own, was for deer on the RO with Chad Smith, and she was 10 years old. And we got her set up on a deer, and we've been practicing with a pellet gun. And I had her set up on a tripod with the gun claw, which they call the triclops now, and the deer kept moving, but we had a whole parade of us. I think there were 6 of us in a line.
There were so many of us. It was my whole family. Chad Smith and his sons. There was,
it was Chad and Colton and the 5 Griegos. And luckily there was one deer that wasn't the smartest knife or smartest animal on the planet and let us get within, I think, about 100 yards. And I had Jennifer set up on the tripod. The deer kept moving. And the first time she put her eye up to the scope, she put her eyeball all the way up against the scope, and I said,
and my
Jennifer,
non-dominant eye too.
Yeah, didn't understand what you were doing.
Dude, I don't know.
But I said, Jen, you can't do that. I'm just going to kick you. But it took 2 or 3 more minutes for the deer to finally give us a position, and the deer behind him cleared, and Jennifer had a clear shot. I said, go ahead and shoot him, Jen, and she did, and the deer just immediately went down. I always had the kids shoot him high in the shoulder, and that deer didn't take a step. In fact, her first 10 animals she shot with 10 shots, and not one of them took a step. But I went to give her a hug after she shot the deer, and she's got this goose egg on the corner of her eye, and there's blood running down her face. And I said, Jen, I'm so sorry, babe. Are you okay? And she's just so tough. She pointed at the deer, and she said, that was awesome. Then she pointed at her forehead, and she said, this really hurts, but that was awesome. She didn't shed a tear or anything. Right there. Yep. It did. And, for the rest of the day, she's like, Dad, do you think I'll get a really nasty scar so people know I shot my own deer?
And I'm like, no, get the ice, I'm like, oh my gosh.
And that started her off, and she didn't have any issues with flinching after that. It was just not until she shot at a range and got scoped that she started having trouble with that. Mm-hmm. But then the last one was Timmy, and I asked Timmy when he was 7, what do you want to do for your first hunt? And he said, I want to go to Africa and I want to hunt lions. And I said, well, how about if we scale that back, buddy? Let's not do a 21-day, $100,000 safari in Africa. Anything else you'd like to do? And he said, I'd like to get an alligator. So I called a friend of mine in Orlando, Gustavo Arvello, and he recommended Hoppy Kempfer from Osceola Outfitters. And we booked it with Hoppy, and he was great. He was teasing Timmy from the time we got there. And Timmy got to where he was shooting little balloons from 40 yards with a pellet gun, like 8 out of 10 times. So he got a shot at an alligator that was swimming, so you can just shoot the top of their head at 40 yards. And he got behind that gun and shot that thing within like a second and just hammered it. And that got him the nickname Gator. So Timmy's been the Gator since then. But we do at least a couple trips a year with each kid.
And the
great
fishermen.
And the fishing, but tremendous time to spend with your family. It's great.
Yeah, and I think the motto that our family really lives on is work hard and play hard. And Bob's been the mentor for that, and the kids have followed suit because that's what life's all about. You got to work hard to play hard. So
You guys definitely do that.
It's just great one-on-one time.
And so much of it, I know the hunting's great, but I'm not a parent, but I can assume that so much of the adventure is just the traveling and being late for a flight, or
Yep.
having the lady sit next to you on the plane and she's needs 2 seats, or just stuff
Yeah.
that you
Right.
guys can laugh about and kind of bring back, and it's always fun hanging out with the Griegos because there's never a dull moment and there's always a great story.
A lot of joking around.
A lot of
lot of it.
joking, yeah. And I mean, you can look around this trophy room, and I mean, there's literally not an open space on the wall, and there's all sorts of animals.
The kids are filling it up, Jay. It's kind of a
Yeah.
travesty.
Yeah, I think though, with all these trophies and everything on the wall, I think you guys as parents would trade every single one of them for your kids for
Oh,
sure.
gosh,
because,
yes.
yeah, they're.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can tell that the Griego kids are very important to you guys, so that's awesome. Jennifer, you have completed the Grand Slam of wild sheep.
Yeah,
And-
that's crazy.
It's crazy. That's such an
Woo, good job,
awesome
Dad.
accomplishment.
Oh, gracias.
And actually, even got one more sheep, so you actually have 5, which is unbelievable. But as well as that, you have been able to shoot most of the Arizona Big Ten. I believe you're just lacking a couple of animals, mountain
Mountain
lion.
lion, buffalo, coos, and
That's it.
yeah, I got
Yeah,
a sheep.
maybe 3.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think 3.
So that's an amazing accomplishment in itself. Even more amazing is the fact that, Jennifer, you have cystic fibrosis. Would you tell me and the listeners that don't know what cystic fibrosis is, tell people what cystic fibrosis is?
So cystic fibrosis is it's a genetic disease. So I was born with it, and it primarily affects my lungs, but it also affects my digestive system and things like that. So my body produces an abnormal amount of mucus, and so that affects my lungs, and it makes it easier to get infections, makes it harder to breathe, and it causes damage. And then in my digestive system, it makes it harder for my body to digest food and take in calories and things like that. So I had to do a lot of breathing treatments and take a lot of medications to help my body do what the mucus is preventing it to do.
Okay. Carol and Bob, when was the first time that you knew that Jen had cystic fibrosis? Being someone that's not very familiar with it, it's one of those things that, there's so many questions I have, but, at what point in time did you know that she had cystic fibrosis?
And Jay, it's important. You introduced me in my career, and Carol is a physician as well. She's a pediatrician, and we met at Arizona State. She went to medical school at the University of Arizona, and she did her pediatric training at Baylor in Houston. And unfortunately, she took care of a fair number of kids that had cystic fibrosis during her training, and she watched them battle their disease. So go ahead, babe.
Yeah, so obviously it being in a pediatric disease, it's something that you're trained as a physician to always rule out worst conditions first when you take care of children. So when Bob and I decided to have children, we had some challenges having kids, and finally, when I was pregnant with Jennifer, there was no CF in our family. It's an autosomal recessive disease, so both mom and dad both have to be carriers. So there was no incidence of any CF in either of our families, and I have a pretty large family. And 1 in 30 people are carriers, unknowingly carriers. So you have no symptoms when you're a carrier. So it's relatively common, but you have to have 2 carriers, obviously, to have the possibility of having a CF child. And when Jennifer was born, she was perfect, and then
For a day, maybe a couple hours.
yeah, perfect
She outgrew that
looking.
perfection.
Yeah.
Hey, it's not very nice.
So we had David. He was a 2-year-old, and Bob was. We did not know what the gender was when I was pregnant with Jennifer, and I wanted to remain it to be a surprise for us. And it killed Bob because he really wanted to know. And so going into the delivery room, Bob had seen in a previous ultrasound and thought for sure this is going to be another boy, which he would be perfectly fine with. So as we were rolling into the OR, I had a C-section. I said, "Hey, Bob, we need to figure out a name because it was going to be Timothy." And I said, "Well, what about if it's a girl?" And he's like, "It's not a girl, it's a boy." I'm like, "Okay, well, we need to decide just in case." And
That's
I'm like,
because the nurse practitioner during the ultrasound said it, whatever it was, 12 weeks, do you want to know the sex of the baby so I can see already? And they take, in our training, we learn how to do a little bit of that, but she's moving the ultrasound around. I couldn't tell what she was looking at, but I figured since she was calling it at 12 weeks, it had to be a boy.
Right.
But obviously not. So anyway, I said, well, we got to figure, literally rolling into the OR. I'm like, okay, if it's a girl, it'll be Jennifer, right? And Bob's like, yeah, whatever.
I'm glad you heard that. Thanks.
And so.
Well, your name was almost whatever.
So anyway, when so Jennifer was born, and Bob was thrilled that it was a girl, and of course I was thrilled, and I sent Bob home. I said, go home and be with David. And I had a worry at the beginning, almost within a couple hours of life, just because, her belly looked a little bit big to me, even though I wasn't being a doctor, holding my baby.
Sure.
I was just enjoying and just being so grateful and blessed that we had another child. And but I had an odd feeling that her belly was just a little bit too big, and then she had thrown up once, and I thought, Again, it's okay. Convincing myself that everything is going to be fine, and sent Bob home to be with David, and then I just watched the clock spin 1 hour after the other, and she had an intestinal obstruction, which is not common, but worst case scenario is that it's going to be cystic fibrosis with a child, a newborn that has an obstruction that hasn't pooped in the first 24 hours. Mm-hmm. And it had been 12 hours, 13 hours, 14 hours, and then I thought it's time that we rule that out. So she was tested with just figuring out what was wrong with her belly, and she was flown to the Children's Hospital to attend to the intestinal obstruction that she had. So by then, still small possibility that it could be normal, just had trouble passing stool. But in the back of my mind, it was there, but I never voiced it and never acknowledged it because I thought, no reason to go there yet. But eventually, Jennifer needed surgery on day 7 of life, and the other doctors were mentioning the possibility of this being cystic fibrosis. About 20% of newborns that have cystic fibrosis have intestinal obstruction, so it's not a common thing, presenting symptom of newborns with cystic fibrosis. But as a pediatrician, that's one thing that you have to make sure that the kid doesn't have, or if it does, you need to test it. Mm-hmm. So just a genetic test, and this is 2001. The genetic test is just a buccal smear, and so those genetics take about a day and a half, 2 days to come back. And by then, she had had surgery, and she had an intestinal perforation, so she had a little complication. She was a very, very brave newborn. It was crazy. And so then the doctor came back, and the results were positive that she did have cystic fibrosis. And, I just, looked down and cried. Yeah. And Bob, I never mentioned it to him before that, and I didn't want him to take away the joy of having a new baby. I mean, sure. I knew bringing up CF would take away all, at least for me, it was taking away all the great joy of having a baby, because I knew what her life would be like. Even in 2001, things were better than they were in the early 1990s when I trained, but it's a lifelong disease that doesn't go away. There's no cure for it. And it's a chronic progressive disease. And so it was a very rough go.
And Jennifer was so tough. She was, I think, 2 days old, and they were drawing her blood. She was in the hospital for a month. And the nurse is sticking a needle into her arm to draw her blood, and Jennifer's just staring at her arm and staring at the nurse with this mean look. And I was like, oh, my gosh, she's so young. I don't think that she even understands what's going on. But I was thinking, I hope nobody ever pisses that little girl off. Yeah. She's only 48 hours old, and she's giving the death stare to this nurse.
Note to brothers, don't mess with her.
Exactly.
I guess my question is, how many people have cystic fibrosis, worldwide?
So in the U.S., we have 30,000 people with cystic fibrosis. Worldwide, it's about almost 70,000. Okay. Basically, the median life expectancy today is probably in the 30s.
It's like 45.
Yeah. So
it's going up every day.
It's going up every day.
And so they're making great strides and
great progress. Thank God. Basically, in the 1990s, if you had a teenager with cystic fibrosis, maybe they would go to college, but the majority of them would see the end of their life before they were 20. But there's been a lot of progress by the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, and it was started by 3 parents in 1955 They had children with CF, and there was really no place for them to go to get support for each other. And there was clearly no science behind it. It was a genetic disease that people lived and died from. So really it took 50 years of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation raising funds and putting all that money to the very valuable science that really led to the production of medications that for the first time in 30 years we've had a medication for cystic fibrosis that really identifies the problem and attacks the problem, and that was just 5 years ago. So for Jennifer to be born during this time, and anyone born with cystic fibrosis today has almost a more normal life. Still have to have all the medications, but
Sure.
their life expectancy is so far much better.
That's awesome.
And Jennifer's been able to benefit from a lot of the clinical trials, and she's been very patient and really great about participating in them because they're a lot of time-consuming things to do, but she's benefiting right now from the third clinical trial that she's been on, and it's making tremendous strides and making progress for her lungs that allows her to live the life that she wants to lead.
Yeah, and that's what's so amazing to me is, when I look at you, you're a perfectly normal, beautiful girl, and, it's everyone that meets you, it's not like you can see cystic fibrosis and say, oh, she has cystic fibrosis. And what's so amazing to me is how ever since I've known you as a little girl, going on all the hunts and going out and, doing all the stuff and running around and playing baseball out there with all the kids at the turkey hunt and all that. I mean, it just doesn't seem to slow you down. But on the same token, what a lot of people don't see is you have to do a lot of things in order to be in your normal state that you're in, right? I mean, talk a little bit about, Jen, some of the trials, some of the challenges that you face on a day-to-day basis as far as your breathing treatments and some of the medication and all the stuff that you have to do.
Yeah. So when my mom mentioned the clinical trials, and my mom is like the best mom ever. She's always there. Because she was.
Yes.
Thanks, Mom.
You
Thank
guys,
you.
I mean, you guys tackle this thing head on, and I know
Yeah.
it's awesome.
And my mom, she quit being a doctor to help raise us, but she's basically a doctor because she's raising me. And she's always on her computer, whatever, researching CF and whatever is going on, and clinical trials that are happening. She's on the board of trustees, right, for the whole CF foundation, and so she's very, very if I could think of words, that'd be great. But she's very, very
Active.
Extremely
thank you.
awesome.
Yeah, that too.
Thank you,
She's really
guys.
active in everything and helping me, and she's always trying to help me in everything she can. So without my mom, I would probably be really sick, and it'd probably be obvious that I had CF. But yeah, my mom helps me a ton, and I do 2 to 3 vest vibrating treatments a day that help move the mucus around in my lungs.
So that just shakes kind of your core and it loosens things up.
Yeah. So my mom, of course, she got me on this new vest, and it's wireless and so battery operated, and it's just it looks like a battery pack on my back, and my brother say it looks like I have a jetpack on.
Okay.
But so that vibrates my lungs and my whole chest to help move the mucus around so I can cough it up. And then I do nebulizer treatments that helps to helps to loosen the mucus, helps me cough it up, and then antibiotics and things like that. And then I take a lot of oral medications to help my digestive system and antibiotics and things like that. And then I also do a tube feeding at night because
what?
A tube feeding at night. So
Tell them about your G-tube.
yes, it's a process, people. So I need 3 times as many calories as a normal person because I burn a lot of calories, and I just also don't take in as much because my body the nutrition doesn't get as much as I need. So I have a G-tube, which is just a tube in my stomach that so throughout the night I do formula, which is high fat, high calorie, and then that runs through my tube at night to help me get more calories. And I do that about every night. And then I do boluses for extra supplements and things like that.
So
8.
How many hours a night do you run?
Oh,
that?
8 hours. I was 800 mils? What?
So
Yeah, 8 hours a night.
and we'll get to the sheep hunts, going out in the bush without having some of these things
My mom was on top of
is
that.
a challenge, but I'm sure she was on top of that.
Of course, for months.
Well, that wasn't something that I was jumping for joy on this whole thing. And Bob told me this whole idea of her wanting to do this sheep hunt. I'm like, all right, well, wait a second. You know,
We can get into all the details of that. That's a whole nother
nother
thing. But Jen, what
subject.
else do you want to? Are you finished with your treatments and your medications?
Yeah. How
Talk
much
about
medication?
enzymes for?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so I take about 30 to 40 pills a day. I try and cut it down because it's a lot to take. But I take, every time I eat, I have to take enzymes that help digest my food. And I just take like a bunch of other like vitamins and things like that to help supplement my body doesn't produce.
So it's very important, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's very important from a health standpoint that you stay as healthy as possible, you stay as active as possible,
Yes.
right? And you are greatly affected if your family gets a cold and you get a cold much more than they are. In
Yeah.
other words, your recovery time takes a lot longer, does it not?
Yes, it does. So I have to be very careful to not get sick. Up until 8th grade, I was homeschooled till 1st grade. And then every flu season until 8th grade, I was homeschooled so that I didn't have a risk of getting sick. And then, and anyone in my family, if they get sick, I kind of stay away from them and like they're kind of quarantined to their room and things like that. I forgot the first part of what you said.
No, but I mean, just in general, you have to be very conscious of your surroundings and people that
Yeah.
you come in contact with, and I'm sure you will have to wash your hands a lot and do all that
Yeah,
kind
a lot
of
of
stuff.
sanitizer. And then in hospitals, I always wear a mask. On airplanes, I wear a mask. And so just try and like keep the contamination to like as small as it can be so I don't get sick because obviously it's harder to recover. And so my lungs, like my body treats my lungs like it already has an infection even if it doesn't. And so my risk of getting infection is a lot higher. And when and if I get sick, it just, my body's already fighting off like help trying to breathe. So getting sick on top of that makes it a lot harder. And so I have to my body has to work a lot harder to fight it off.
When you feel your best, whether it be just whenever you feel your best, typically is there a time of year when you feel your best? Is there a time of year when maybe you don't feel your best? From maybe a lung function standpoint, or what keeps you ticking good?
It kind of fluctuates. Like, to me, I don't really notice that much when I'm sick because it happens, unless it's like a drastic change, then I notice. But a lot of it is it slowly gets worse, and so I don't notice it because it just happens. Like, to me, I don't really notice. But they're like, if my grandparents, like I see them every couple of weeks, or if I go to see them, they can kind of tell when I'm sick because they see like, oh, I've lost weight, or I just look a little bit worse, or I look more pale. So they can kind of tell more than I can because it happens so slowly, I barely notice. But yeah, sometimes it can be like a drastic infection when I get really sick, or sometimes it just slowly happens and I don't really notice it. But if I get better, I can usually feel it.
So I want to get into, you were at the Wild Sheep Foundation convention, and I want to know what started your idea of wanting to tell your dad that you wanted to complete the Grand Slam of North American Wild Sheep. And at what exact point was it that you said, this is something that I want to do, and it's something that I know I can tackle, and this is what I want to do?
Do you want to add something real quick, Dad? You're writing notes before I answer the next question.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Just make some of the notes.
Just in
Keep
case
your
you
eyes
wanted
on
to add a
your own
little. Well, because sometimes the time goes away and you're like, oh, I want to say it like in that moment. So, I was giving you the
Well,
option.
thank you, Jen.
Oh,
That's so
you're
kind of
welcome.
you.
Hi, Jen.
Thanks, guys. I
Wow,
tried.
who are you really?
I don't know. This is like, I'm just doing it for today's podcast, guys. Oh, yeah. So,
You're still sedated from your wisdom tooth removal, I
Yeah,
think.
I will
think
add
that's what
that
it is.
a few days ago, Jen was put under the knife and had all of her wisdom teeth pulled out. And even at game night last night, you had gauze in. And
yeah.
one of the funniest videos I've seen in a long time was Jen when she was still under heavy, I don't know what it was, medication. It almost sounded like you were on your 21st birthday.
Yeah.
But at what point in time, take us back to the time when you decided that you wanted to pursue the Grand Slam of Sheep?
So, right before Sheep Show of 2017, I had just gotten, done, or I had just finished 6 months of IV therapy. So in the spring of 2016, I got really sick with an infection in my lungs, and I had to do IV therapy because that was the only thing that was going to get rid of it at that point. And I lost about 10 pounds over the summer in a matter of like 2 weeks, and I wasn't gaining it back. I had no appetite. I was nauseous almost every day for 6 months. And so I was really, really sick basically the whole first semester of freshman year, and I had a IV in my chest that I was doing IV therapies every day. Like, was it twice a day? Mm-hmm. And so that was rough, but I finally tested negative for the bacteria that was in my lungs. And so in December, I got my IV out finally, and I was just getting back to myself in January at the sheep show. I had just started gaining weight back, and I was kind of starting to feel better. And a couple months earlier, I looked up the average lifespan of a CF person because I was just curious, and it was 37. And like February of 2016 was when like the website had last been updated. And so, like, growing up with this disease, I always knew that my life was being shortened, but I never like had a solid number until then. And so that like scared me and kind of freaked me out, like it would anybody else when you have like a number actually put on your life. But I just kind of pushed it to the back of my mind and ignored it. And so at the sheep show, when Kirstie Ennis was talking about her trials, about her leg and everything in her life, it kind of just like hit me hard that I may not live long enough to do some of the things that I want to do, but if I do live long enough, I may not be healthy enough to do them. And so that really hit me emotionally, and I started crying. And no one really said anything there. Like my parents were comforting me and stuff. But then at the hotel room that night,
This was at the convention,
mm-hmm,
at the
dinner. It was
dinner.
at the dinner.
Okay.
Like during her speech. Mm-hmm. And so, Bandit's having a dream over there.
Bandit's having a nightmare.
It'll go away. He'll do.
Go ahead, babe.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna take my jacket off real quick.
No
It's really
sweat.
hot, like in the hot seat, people. That was one of the phrases last night that I was trying to say, and no one got it, so I had to skip it.
On the Jace got hot.
But so yeah, that night after dinner, we were back in a hotel room, and I was talking to my dad, and he was like, "So like, what happened?" And I was explaining like how I felt, and he was like, "Well, do you want to go sheep hunting?" And I said, "Well, that's impossible."
Well, I think it came out, you said there were some of the things that
You didn't want to do.
think that you
Yeah, I
would be
didn't-
able to do. And I said,
Mhm.
well, what do you want to do? And you said, well, I'd like to go camping or sheep hunting, but I could never do that.
Yeah.
And what did I tell you?
And my dad told me, well, you can do whatever you put your mind to, and I'll help you do it. And I was like, okay, like, let's do it. And so
Excuse me, Jay, you'd love to see the little kind of grin she got when I said, well, Jennifer, I don't know what you want to do, but, you know, whatever you want to do, I'll back you on it and help you do it. But I don't think anybody with cystic fibrosis has ever gotten all 4 North American wild sheep. And she's got this kind of smile on her face and started nodding her head. And
Oh,
she goes,
yeah.
like, I'll do
I
it.
want to be the first one.
Yeah, so that's kind of where it all started. My dad helped me, and so we got back that Sunday, and my dad was like, all right, let's go hike the mountain. And that sucked because I was not in shape at all. I had just finished my IV therapies, and my lung function was about 52%. And so I was hiking that mountain, and I like could barely get up it. I was coughing. I felt like I was going to cough up a lung. Like, it was a struggle to get up there. And then after about 6 months, so my dad was able to like get the hunt for me to go on my doll sheep hunt with Raven's Throat Outfitters in
Well, what was my deal with you
what was
about
your
the
deal?
Yep.
when you?
Oh yeah, hold on. So he said that like he would back me on it as long as I was doing it for myself and I wasn't doing it for everybody else. And so I was like, all right, like I want to do it. That deal, right? I knew that. Took a second. So my dad, he kind of messed up his knee hiking on and training for a bunch of hunts. And so his deal was, the deal he was talking about, was he would get his knee redone, and then we would both train together for the hunt. So he got partial knee replacement and in March
February of what, 2016?
2017.
2017. So yeah, my deal was you get your lungs in shape, I'll get my knee in shape, we'll do it together. So our hikes were painful for both of
Oh, it was
us.
a struggle.
So that's one question I would have, and we'll keep going into the story. But so it's one thing to sit and mentally say, this is something I want to do, but you came back in the first hike, it was like, oh dear, what have I done? Did you
Kinda,
have a
yeah.
sense of like, oh, this is going to be tough?
I did, but luckily, since I had just been sick, I was kind of like, okay, well, I'm recovering. So if if I had just been like, if that was my baseline and I had started there, it probably would have hit me harder mentally. Like, oh crap, like this is not going to be possible. But since I was recovering, I was like, all right, I'm starting from the bottom. Like, let's work to the top. And so my dad, like, got his knee done, and we were training and working hard for about 6 months before that mountain hunt.
That's awesome.
And what was so great, Jay, was I didn't have to be kicking her in the butt to get her to do it, because she had told people, she had told our good friends, and Jen, you'll need to talk more about Young Wild TV and Lincoln Tapp and Jim Tapp and Cooper Ross, and those guys have just been phenomenal documenting this. But they, once, we're friends with Lincoln and Jim, and once they heard about it, they wanted to document it. So then it was, she'd sort of written a check that she had to back it up, and I wasn't having to kick her to get her up the mountain. She knew that she had an obligation, she'd committed, and she wanted to prove she could do it. So it was nice. It's great as a parent when you don't have to keep telling your kids what to do, when they're self-motivated to do it.
Yeah, so, talking about the taps now. Should I do that?
So,
or Jake can ask a question.
yeah.
Okay.
So here you are, you're beginning your training, and you've got your first doll sheep set up.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got the doll sheep set up first.
Yes.
And then at what point in time, how did it all start to fall into place as to setting up all four? And did you know going into the doll sheep hunt that like number 2 was set up, or was it a deal of let's get the doll first and then we'll, how did those dominoes fall into place?
It was kind of like in...
First,
like,
if I can interrupt for 1 second, even just setting up the first hunt was challenging and realizing physically how was she going to manage all those things.
And you're probably going, what?
Yeah,
are we doing?
I was like, you guys
for
are
like
insane.
10 days in the backcountry?
Yeah,
Are
like
you
a whole
kidding me?
back. What are we doing here? What's the detail?
Right, because we have no power, right? So
Yeah.
breathing treatments, those things are not going to happen.
Right, and I
so
needed
you're
to
like-
know, where is the nearest hospital? Not a clinic. It needed to be, and was there going to be some emergency medical services available to them? So obviously we were up to date on our global rescue membership, and and Raven's Throat Outfitters were awesome. I told them in advance. I said, okay, first of all, Jennifer has a lot of equipment that she needs to bring, so weight's going to be an issue. So we're going to be able to put everything to where it's going to fit in the helicopter, but these are things that must be with her, and that making sure communications were great. So if anything happens, that they would be able to notify Raven's Throat at base camp, and then to get a helicopter out to a facility.
Because here's my baby on the side of the mountain, and Mama Bear's not going to let them.
And Carol was great about finding all the battery-operated nebulizers for breathing treatments and vests, and we didn't have a vest at that point, so we had to do it by hand. But Carol did a tremendous amount of research and had all this stuff scheduled and packed for us to go. And fortunately, Jennifer weighs about 30 pounds, so when we have 100 pounds worth of medical gear to take, it wasn't too onerous to get on the plane. And Grizz and Ginger Turner, they were awesome with helping us with that, and very, very lax about requirements for what she could take. So.
And not only that, the actual medication, the actual pills that she probably had to take, or what, like a sandwich bag per day, or what?
I had a pill box. It was a 2-week pill box. It was
a big gallon bag.
Yeah, it was like a giant. It didn't even fit in the Ziploc gallon bags. I had to get one of the bigger ones. You feel put clothes in. It was a big one.
Unreal.
And then everything, those were her maintenance meds, and then there was always the as-needed meds.
Yeah, there was a gallon bag of if this goes wrong, take this. And luckily I had my dad, who knows what the pills are actually for. Yeah. So I was all right, if just give Dad the bag, and then if you need anything, we'll give it to you.
Yeah, and thank God, obviously I wouldn't have let Jennifer go without Bob, of course, knowing what to do and having to do her manual chest PT and all that. And I just had to just remind them, just remember when you're on a long hunt or a long stalk, she still needs to have that, because I'm all about keeping everything at a regular, everything. I don't want things bad to happen. So, Bob knew well in advance the things that she normally does, and if she has issues, with bellyache, which happened on the first hunt, you need to act right away. Jen likes to think that it'll go away. It's just a transient thing, and you have to be somewhat proactive at the first sign of any.
Stay way out in front of it.
Way out, especially when you're in the middle of nowhere. And when I let the doctor know, we wanted to kind of get her lungs checked, just the week or two before she was
It was the day
leaving.
before we left.
And I just kind of had to let the doctor know And obviously she trusted that the parents, Bob and I, would be not putting her in
Right.
harm's way.
My doctor was like, "What are you thinking?"
Yeah, so I said, this is what's happening. This is where she's going, just to kind of make sure that I'm not crazy. You're okay with this? And she's like, well, it's all about, living life to the fullest.
Right,
And
quality
we're
life.
never guaranteed tomorrow, none of us. So
Right.
that was, obviously a lesson we've learned, Bob and I have, raising our children. It's really been the blessing in disguise for that, because life is truly sweet, no matter what you have going on with you, whether our siblings and our children. That's been a great lesson.
One of the things as an observer of the Griego family that I value so much just from knowing you guys is the fact that obviously, Bob, you've done very well in your professional practice, and but the kids drive old cars, and they could probably have everything that money could buy, and it's very obvious that they're taken care of, but they have to work for their things, and they have to perform and do certain things. And I think that'll just make them in life be more productive people.
Right.
And if it was just given to them, it's very obvious that everything in this house it's not given, it's earned.
Right. Well, thanks,
And-
Jan. Carol and I
Absolutely.
share we share that priority, and we've talked about it before we had kids, and we want to give our kids enough to do something, but not enough to do nothing.
Yeah.
So we've told them we'll give you stuff to help with opportunities, but our deal with cars is they get a job and they save money, and I'll match it, and then they can buy a vehicle, and it gives them motivation to have skin in the game. I think it's important.
But even like the car you drive, I think
love
it's
my
a
old car.
second or third generation. I think your dad
Yeah.
drove it.
Yeah,
and
my
I
dad
think
drove it, and then David
drove
oh,
it.
it's my favorite. I love it. It's
Yeah.
a 98 4Runner, and it's my favorite.
Yeah.
And
So-
obviously going to a nice private Catholic school, my friends get the nicest cars and brand new cars, and they'll total their cars and then get another brand new car, and it's they don't respect it at all. And that little car, even though it's gone through a bunch of people, it's still I love that car. And even as a kid, we had to save up and buy our own
Wii.
when we wanted, we save up and bought our own bikes, and it sucked in the moment. It was like, Mom, can you just buy it for me, please?
Yeah.
But and we went on a trip to Hawaii. My brother and I, we saved up and bought our own iPads so we could watch movies on the flight there. And so obviously it sucked in the moment because I was I just can you guys just get it for me? But you learn a lot having to pay for your own things, and the respect once you give that thing because you bought it, it was your money. The respect you have for that is far much more than you would if someone gave it to you.
Yeah, and you value it more because you know that you had to save for it. And sure, Mom and Dad could just put it on a credit card and they probably wouldn't even know it was there. But the fact that you have to earn things in life, and nothing in life is free, it's very evident to me that's it comes from the top down. You guys, I can just tell you guys teach that. So here we are, we're training for the first Doll sheep hunt, and we're in Arizona.
Yes.
It's hotter than blazes.
Yeah, it started slowly getting harder, and I was like, this is terrible. And I
And-
had tennis season, so tennis season was during the midst of all of this, and so I would have practice 2.5 hours, and then matches that were maybe 3 hours, including the drives and everything. So I didn't have that much time to work out, so I would work out on weekends with my dad and stuff. And then right when season ended and school got out, I was like, all right, we've got to kick it into gear. We got a couple months, and so we really kicked it in after school got out.
And where did you train there?
Then we went to our cabin in northern Arizona in Greer, and we trained at around 8,000 feet to 11,000 feet, hiking a bunch. And so by the end of it, I was able to hike from elevations going from 900 to 1,100 with minimal coughing, which was crazy compared to how I started.
And tell Jay, excuse me, what happened to your lung function after that?
Oh, so it went from around 52 to around 65.
Yeah, and so
Just
that
crazy.
number of 52 to 65, that's a 13% increase. Talk about that number of 52 or 65. Is that as simple as say my lung function would be 100 and yours would be 65 at your best? Is that
Yes. So roughly, obviously everyone's lung function is different, but a normal lungs would probably be around 100%. And so my lungs at that, even kind of, well, not really now, but at that time, my baseline was around 65. And so the 50s were low because I just had my infection, but still going from 52 to 65, that 13% jump in 6 months without added antibiotics and things like that, usually it would take me around maybe like almost 2 years to recover that much, but doing that in 6 months was crazy.
So, I mean, that's just right there from someone like me just looking at it as a third party, that added exercise and lung work every day, I would assume consistent cardio helped you.
Yeah. And a lot of people, like, I kind of use it to my advantage sometimes, but they think because I have CF, it's like keep it low, keep your exercise to a minimum so you don't like push yourself too hard. But the more I push myself, then the better I'll get. Even though I struggle in the moment, it's better in the long term because like I push myself farther. It's kind of like when you're working out, like you push yourself harder so you can get better and get stronger. So that's how it has to be with my lungs. I have to push myself harder to get better.
So with your lungs, so in other words, it would be in essence like if I were really sick and say had the flu or pneumonia or something where I couldn't breathe and I was hacking up loogies and then I went and tried to hike, right? So I couldn't get oxygen in on a normal every day. That's what you deal with every day. In other words, you feel short of breath. That's the challenge you face when you exercise is you fatigue quicker, correct?
Yeah, so people, obviously I don't know because I've grown up with these lungs and like I said, everything happens slowly, so I don't really notice the significant difference. But to me, like, these are my lungs and this is how I breathe. But they kind of, like, doctors and stuff, you compare CF lungs to, like, a regular person trying to breathe through a straw.
Okay.
So to me, I'm, like, taking my deepest breath, and that's my deepest breath. But if you were breathing in my lungs, you'd be like, this sucks. Like, this is not my normal breath.
Right. So you're training, and then the first hunt at Raven's Throat comes up, and you and your dad head off to the Northwest Territories in Canada. So I assume you flew through Edmonton and then up through...
we went to Whitehorse the first time.
Whitehorse, okay.
Yeah, and then we flew up there.
Walk us through that hunt, and how did it go?
So the medicine process going up to that hunt, I had a giant suitcase. It was like a pharmacy on wheels. I had like everything I could ever possibly imagine, and then a little bit less because I couldn't bring everything. So going up there, I had a lot of things to bring, obviously. And then when we landed at base camp, we had to drop half our stuff and go to spike camp. And so,
why don't you mention real quick when we first got to Whitehorse, and Jim and Lincoln and Cooper met us, and we didn't know they were going to go. Jim didn't say for sure that they were going to go on the hunts. He said at the banquet that they would like to do it, and then there wasn't a lot of communication, and they called us a week before and said, we're going to be there, we're excited. We get to the hotel, they meet us, they help carry in our bags. The heckling started immediately.
Oh, it was so much fun.
And Jennifer had been good friends with Lincoln off of social media for a while, but just their sense of humor and everything. And Cooper... What's Cooper, 6'9" with the afro, 7'14"?
He's 6'9".
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he's so funny, but we had so much fun. The first day we met them, they were like, this is going to be a tremendous experience. Just the joy of, people ribbing each other, and they were just there to help out and get it on video. So Jennifer and Lincoln and Jim and Cooper and I just, from the hotel on, it was just teasing and joking and motivational stuff. So
and it was a lot of fun because obviously Lincoln had gotten his Grand Slam when he was like 12 or 13. I think he finished his, and so he kept asking me and his dad and Cooper. Everyone was asking me like, "All right, you ready? Like, can you believe this?" I was like, no. Like in my head, I'm still at home on my bed, but like I'm here, and it was slowly getting closer, and I was like, this is insane. So every step of the way, they'd be like, "All right, you ready? Like, can you believe this?" I was like, no. Like this is still seems like it's crazy. So we flew into base camp and just like landing on the lake and that float plane, I was like, this is insane. Like it was so cool just to be able to see that and to fly in and see you're surrounded by nothing but mountains and animals and wilderness.
It's overwhelming, isn't it?
It's insane. Yeah. And it was scary. I was like,
like what have I done?
Yeah.
Like what am I going to try and do? Like
And flying
I'm 45, and I had those same feelings this last summer when I did it. I was like,
and seeing those mountains when you're flying in, it's like, you're kidding me. Like I have to go hike that in a couple days. So it was really kind of freaky, and I'll give you a second here to put it on. So it was really freaky, but also really cool to see what I was flying into. And so we landed at base camp and met up with all the guides and Grizz and Ginger, and it was so cool. Everyone was so excited. And we met everyone, got everything, and like got set up and dropped our stuff. And so I had to go to like 2 duffel bags, I think. So I had to leave my machine, my vest that I had for 15 years that I hadn't gone a day without. So that was really like really scary. It was like I may be on the mountain for 10 days without this machine that I've had every day of my life. So that was kind of scary to drop that and leave that at camp. But obviously I had prepared for that for months. So I was scared to do it, but get ready. And my dad would be there to help do my PT and stuff, help me through it. So I packed everything in my bags, and then we ate lunch, shot the guns, and packed up the helicopter. And I was like, this is insane.
There was such a neat atmosphere, Jay, because Grizz and Ginger Turner had just bought Redstone Outfitters, and it had just become Raven's Throat. They'd just taken it over. And Carol happened to have hunted with Grizz when she was hunting with Stan Simpson and got her doll sheep 2 years before. But they were so excited for Jennifer to be there, and she was on the first hunt, their first hunt of their whole concession, and it was just really neat. They were very, very supportive and excited for her. So the whole atmosphere was kind of magical that that she was doing it and everybody was so behind her.
That was awesome.
That's awesome. So when you line up on your very first sheep, I know how I was.
Yeah,
It was pretty rattling to me. How did you handle it, or how did it go for you?
So, well, we got into that spy camp. We were kind of like in a valley, and so we had mountains on both sides of us, and we were kind of lower, so it was cool to be like right by the river, and it was really green. It was because I'd never been in anything like that before, so it was really awesome to be down there. And so I had my first mountain house and everything. I slept in a tent the first night, and so that was awesome. The whole experience was great. And the next morning, the guides had spotted some rams up on the side of the mountain, and so we were looking at them for a while and wanted to see like if they were legal, and then they were, and we were like, okay, like let's go after them. But we had to wait a little bit to see what they were going to do. And so once we figured out what our plan was, we packed up, and I did my meds while we were waiting, so I did everything, and then we packed up and got up the mountain, and it was crazy to start from there. So we went across the river. I got carried across the river, and then we hiked up the mountain. And when we got set up, he was around 600 yards. So to practice for the hunt, I shot at around 400 yards. And before the hunt, I was really, really flinchy and really, really gun shy because I had gotten hit before. And so
With a scope?
I got scope cut on my first deer hunt, but I shot a deer, so I really did not care. And then I got hit again when I was shooting my new gun that I had just got, and the scope was a little bit too far back. So when that hit me the second time, it freaked me out because I was in a range, and it didn't cut me. It wasn't as bad as the first one, but it just mentally really messed me up. So ever since then, I had been really in my head about it and really flinchy. And so when I told my dad and I decided to go on this hunt, he was like, okay, we got to fix it. So I dry fired for months and months, and we shot at our cabin around 400 yards. So I was dialed in. I wasn't flinching anymore, and I was really confident in my shots. So shout out to my dad for
talk about your dry
helping me out.
firing. It was like you did thousands of rounds with me sitting there videoing her with the camera, putting under pressure to dry fire and not flinch.
So simulating the exact, what you're trying to simulate is the exact experience.
Yeah, with just a snap cap in there, but she'd pull her head up, and I said, Jen, here's the video. You're pulling your head up. And she's like, why are you putting me under so much pressure? I said, because you're going to be under pressure when you're shooting for real. So just get past it. And she got to where she was.
So
just
then I got to where I
stone cold
wasn't
doing
even blinking anymore. And so after thousands of rounds of dry firing, I was finally confident in my shots, and then I was confident with live rounds and everything. So I was like, okay. But I'd only practiced at 400 yards, and Mike Whalen made this gun for me. It was a 6.5 Creedmoor, and he said it shoots around 600 yards. I was like, okay, sounds good. I practiced at 400, and then we were on the mountain, and they ranged him at 630 or something, and I was like, okay, I'll shoot. And in my head, I didn't say that, but I was like, okay, he said it shoots around 600. I'd never shot that far, but sounds good. And they're like, okay, let's get closer. So I was ready to shoot at 630 or whatever, even though I was never gonna shoot that far. But we hiked in and got as close as we could, and I shot kind of across a little ravine.
Can you tell about how long you laid there? It was a lot of pressure on you.
Well, that was we moved up more.
But that ram went
set
in
up
a position where he could go around the corner. We wouldn't be able to see him. We'd have to drop all the way down the mountain and get back to him. Or if he went the right way, he would give her a shot as close as 400. And we laid on the mountain in that cold shale for an hour, I think.
Was it raining?
It was misting.
Yeah, it misted a little bit, and then it kind of God was on that mountain incredibly. Hiking up there, I felt like I could actually breathe normally. It was insane. And then you could see, obviously, when you're up there, you can see crazy far, and so we could see kind of the clouds coming in. We were like, oh crap, this may not end well. But then it kind of blew away, and it was misted us a little bit, and it was like, dang. So God was definitely on there and blessed me greatly with all of these hunts. But
Jay, it was unbelievable to see that. The clouds would be coming right at us, pouring rain, and it would just kind of separate around her. And
it was insane.
And then her shot and everything else, it was just a total gift.
It was amazing. And so on the mountain, I was laying prone, and then I was like on the shale, which I heard about the shale before. My dad's like, all right, this shale's going to suck. It did suck. I hate hiking in shale. But so I was laying on there. I was like on my pack, and my ram had laid down. And so I had him in my scope, and obviously it's a white dot, so it was really nice because I could see it. And my dad was like, all right, when he stands up, you need to shoot. So I was behind my gun, and I was just laying there. I was like, okay, I'm ready. And because we didn't know.
Were you dry firing at all?
Mm-mm.
No. Okay.
No. And so I knew, like, when he stood up, because if he went one way, we'd have to go hike around the mountain again. So I was like, all right, when he stands up, I'm shooting him. So he finally gets up. I was like, okay. And so then I shot, and it was like, oh my gosh, I didn't really freak out, but I was like, this is insane. And he kind of went up and had to shoot him like a couple more times, and so then he like went back behind this kind of cliff thing, and so we couldn't see him anymore. I'm like, okay, well, I know I shot him, and I know I hit him good. So we had to hike down and around. How long did that take? Like maybe an hour.
Yeah, it was really steep, and we had to go kind of a ways around a ravine to get there.
Yeah, we had to go like back down and then back up the shale, and I was like, so we finally hiked across, and so then we kind of walked around. Where he had gone down was kind of this kind of cliff face, but it was kind of like steps. It's kind of hard to explain, but he was behind one of those, so we couldn't see him. And then we turned the corner, and he was there, and then he rolled down, and it was like,
Like he went just rolling by you almost?
Yeah, and I was like, whoa, and it was insane just to see him roll down, and I was kind of like, well, we just hiked all the way up here, and now he's all the way down there, but it was insane, and
Another gift, Jay, headed right towards camp.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Right downhill,
Yeah.
and it was impressive, though. He went off a cliff on the way down. He was dead at that point and just flipped, and it was pretty impressive, but
it was insane.
Unreal. I saw mine. They said they thought it like rolled like 800 feet.
Whoa.
So, I mean, I know the feeling
Probably
when it's just
like
going like
It's
this.
like-
You're going, well, I hope he has horns when he gets to
Yeah,
the bottom.
Exactly.
it was
Exactly.
And then so we kind of stopped at the top, and there were guys still at our camp because I shot him. You could still see our camp from where we were, so we kind of flagged the guys up to us. And I remember I stopped, and I still had my almonds from the plane ride. It's like 2 days before, and so we stopped, my rain gear on, and it was just starting to rain a little bit. And so I ate my almonds, and then everyone was up there. I'm like, all right, let's go. So we went down the shale, and going down shale is so much more fun than going up shale. It was like skiing.
It's like skiing,
yeah,
isn't it? Yeah.
It was like skiing. It was so much fun, except going up it was terrible.
Yeah.
But going down
Because
was
every
so much
step
fun.
you take up, then you're down, and you just,
Yep.
it's like you never gain
Yeah.
any distance.
that's right.
Yeah.
But going down is like skiing.
Dream,
so
yeah.
that was so much fun, and I got down there pretty fast, and it was like crazy. Just he was laying there, and I was like, "This is insane." So I went up and grabbed him and looked at him. It was amazing. It was unbelievable.
And tell him what your guide told you after you shot your ram that Grizz had said.
Oh yeah, so Grizz, since they had just gotten the camp, like nothing was really named yet. And so Grizz told me, like, wherever you shoot your ram, we're gonna name it after you. So I shot him kind of in that valley, and so now it's Jen's Valley at camp.
That's awesome.
That's really
That
cool.
is awesome. So, were you able to get on the sat phone and call mom?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome. What do
I-
you think, Carol?
Oh, it was unbelievable. First of all, it was day one
Yeah.
and day two.
It was day one,
You
yeah.
know, they got.
And so
I-
you're thinking
oh
right
my
on.
God.
It's
I-
not day 10 or 12.
Exactly.
Or,
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I was wishful thinking, but I thought, thank the Lord, because
Yeah.
I was like, this could not have gone any better. It was almost too good to be true. I was like, this is unbelievable. But they did practice for everything and anything that could happen. So that was great preparation and patience, and it all came together. And I was just so relieved. And I thought, okay, great, now they can enjoy. And and me, I could like, now they just need to get home. And I'm just so grateful that everything went well, and to even get the shot off and to come back with the animal. And what a great journey for Jennifer, just this first
Absolutely.
one, and for everyone to celebrate just being there.
Yeah.
Whether you get the animal or not wasn't even the issue. It's like, I'm going to go after this challenge, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But
Yeah.
it was a really wonderful thing to witness and to be on the outside of it, and having Bob be the driving force of making this happen for Jennifer was just like so wonderful to be, having her dad just carry her, motivate her, prepare her. It was just wonderful, and it was a great team effort.
So, that was in the Northwest Territories. You've got one down.
Yeah.
Can you tell you? I think you're going to mention before some of the hardships. Do you want to tell them about the night
Yeah.
you got your ram? It was
So-
one of the scariest things you had
it
health-wise.
sucked. So obviously, like, that day was amazing, and it felt like I didn't have like CF that day. It was such a great day, and that night we cooked the back straps on a stick, which was like the best meal ever. Like Mountain House and then back straps on a stick. It was so good. But then that night, since I'd never had Mountain House before and never had like dehydrated food like that, I wasn't prepared for so much sodium in my body. I got a really bad obstruction, and so that night in the tent I barely slept at all. I had some of the worst stomach cramps I've ever had, and so I had things to take care of that, so I did. And luckily we got back to camp. I think we got fogged in the next day, so we got back in like a day or two later. And once I had like normal food again, it went back to normal. But that one night in camp was insane. I had terrible cramps and things
You're
like
in
that.
horrible pain. It sounded like, one of the things she can struggle with is intestinal obstruction that requires surgery to get her past it. So she drank a lot of Hydrate and Recover from Wilderness Athlete and water and just tried to get hydrated again that night. But it was as miserable as I'd seen her. I mean, her stomach almost looked like she had appendicitis, but she doesn't have an appendix. It was taken out when she was an infant. But it was scary, and you're thinking, we're in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Yeah, so Jennifer used, bolus with Miralax, which is a common medication used for anyone who has constipation or things like that. But she uses quite a lot of that and just tremendous amount of volume in her G-tube, just to kind of, because you really couldn't drink enough fluids to be able to pass that. So if you get on top of it early, it can work out. But being in elevation and the different diet, thank goodness it all resolved within another day. So that was
scary.
And luckily, like, I trained in around 8,000 feet elevation. So, and the elevation where we were was like 4,000 or 5,000 feet. So that was a shock for me, but it was really nice because I trained in a lot higher than I was hiking in.
Since then, since you have some trouble with Mountain House, have you found any other dehydrated meals that work better with your system, or how do you?
I just since I knew that was gonna happen, I just prepared for it more. So I just hydrated myself better, and it was just like because it was dehydrated and the sodium level was really high. So I just prepared myself more and drank a lot more water with it and bolused more things so that I could prevent it from happening again, and it didn't. So that was good.
And most of those, I researched how other dehydrated foods and what was a better brand, and they're also similar in the sodium content, that it was like, okay, it's dehydrated stuff.
Right.
So obviously she's going to have to, whatever the envelope requires to add water, she's going to have to add more water.
Right.
And then
I just drank a bunch on top of it.
And then followed every meal with
Make
a
it like
lot
soup
more
again.
water. So that was something I didn't forecast as being an issue, but I'm glad that was discovered early, so that now she, for any future hunts, she was prepared and knew how to handle it.
Sure. So the Northwest Territory hunt's down.
Yes.
Then what was next, and how did that come about?
So, okay, so I know you asked earlier, like, if we planned the hunts before. So my dad was, like, in charge of all of that. So
The second hunt, the second person I contacted was Neil Lawson about hunting the Turner Ranch, the Armanderos for desert sheep, and he was great to us, and we got that booked. And I think you or Brian Rimza gave me Brendan Burns information, and I talked to him about Rocky Mountain sheep, and his recommendation with what he knew was going on in North Dakota. I bought that tag for Jennifer for her bighorn, and that was her second hunt.
So, yeah, by when did we have all the hunts booked? By when, probably?
Well, we didn't figure out what we were going to do for a stone until you were done with the 3.
Yeah, but I mean the first 3 for that year.
It was all in that year, though, right?
Yeah,
I did the first 3 in that year. By, like, when were they all booked? By March, April?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But
March,
this
April.
was in, like, July, right?
Mhm,
and
July,
then
I
the
got
very
my
next
doll.
one was the
First weekend of
bighorn.
November was in North Dakota. It was freezing.
Was it
So
cold?
cold.
That was one question I was going to ask you. So does cold affect your lungs and breathing? You're much better off in a warm
Yes.
climate than in cold temperatures?
And the cold temperatures, I had this face mask, well, on that hunt, actually, so it was really cold, and the cold air, like, constricts my airway, so it makes it harder to breathe. So I had this face mask that warms the air as I inhale and exhale, so that helps a lot, except when we were hiking, the, like, hole in the face mask is so small, I could barely get any breaths in. So I was like, okay, so I ripped it off, and then Jim Tapp was like, are you going to be okay? I was like, at this point, it's either don't get enough air or get really cold air. I'm like, I'm going to go with the cold air. So I took it off and was hiking around with that. So the cold air does make a significant difference. It like makes it harder to breathe. But if I'm hiking around, then my body's warm anyway, so then it doesn't have that much of an effect as if I was standing there in the cold air.
Okay. So you're in North Dakota, and you're lined up on the second ram.
So that ram, they thought that was going to be like the state record ram, and they had eyes on that since it was born because it came from the breaks, Missouri breaks.
Montana.
Yeah, so that ram had been through a bunch, kind of like me. It's kind of like my soulmate in a ram. It was like, had been through much pneumonia, and his brother died from pneumonia, and so things like that. So when you looked at the horns, you could tell like when he was sick and stuff, which was pretty cool. So that ram had a great story, and
we didn't know a lot of that stuff until you harvested the ram.
Mm-hmm. The biologist told us these stories, and so he had his eyes on him, and a bunch of other people had been trying to get that ram. And so luckily we had gotten permission to go on some private land to look for the ram. And so my dad got there a couple days before I did because I had school. And so I met him up there, and he was like, okay, we spotted the ram today. And we kind of knew where he was. So we went up there the next day, and he kind of would show up and then go away. And he kind of disappeared a bunch. So
for years, Jay, that ram had been hunted by auction hunters, and no one had been able to find him. And the day before I was going to go pick up Jennifer and Lincoln, Jim and Cooper at the airport, I saw a ram go over a ridge probably 2 miles away. I was looking through my spotting scope, and I knew it had to be him. He was just so much bigger than the other rams around there. But he was on a piece of private, and I think he'd been on that every year during hunting season. That's why he got so big. But we were able to get permission to go there, and that's where we went the first day of the hunt.
Mm-hmm. And we kind of saw him, but everyone was kind of scattered, and so we weren't all together. And he would pop up for a little bit, then he'd be gone. So they'd be like, oh, we missed him. And so it was the second day. We had split up, and Jim and Lincoln were going to go down. We were kind of like the top of this like ridge thing, and they were going to go down and at the bottom and see if they could see anything. And then we were at the top, and right as we were going to drive off to go somewhere else, one of the guys with us looked over, and he was like, wait, there's a ram over there. And I don't even know how he saw it. It was so hard to see and covered in snow and everything. And so
was it Willie?
No, it was Rusty Christopherson. Oh. Yeah, Willie unfortunately was and that's Brendan's friend, was gonna help us, and then he was on a hunt, so he couldn't go on that deal. I never did meet Willie. I spoke with him several times. Really a nice guy, and everybody was pulling for Jennifer to get this ram because the biologist figured it was his last winter. He was an old ram, and they thought he was gonna probably die of starvation that year. But Rusty Christopherson was the local guy that was helping us get around and stuff, and he saw him and.
It was a great spot, and so we got out on him, and then we hiked over a little bit. It was like the terrain was really weird, so we hiked over to where we could shoot across this valley, and the guy whose land we were hunting on, he told us before, he's like, do not shoot it in that valley. He's like, I had to get a deer down there once. It was terrible, so I was kind of like, okay, like, I can't shoot it, like, drop down there.
Here we are, yeah.
Yeah. And so I was wearing every layer of any clothes I had. I was freezing.
Wind blowing and cold.
It was blowing about 25 miles an hour, and it was snowing, and she was laying in the snow for 45 minutes, I think.
So I was laying there, and I didn't know what that ram had looked like because I had never actually seen it. And so my dad was like, okay, like, we'll wait till he stands up because he was sitting behind this little bank, so you could only see the top of his horns. And so my dad, when he stood up, he was like, okay, you can shoot the ram. And so he didn't want to tell me that was a target ram we were looking for because he didn't want to, like, freak me out. So all I knew was, like, okay, this is the ram I'm going to shoot. And so when he stood up, I was behind my rifle, and I'd been laying there for 45 minutes. And so I shot, and I held for wind because it had been windy that whole day. But right when I shot, the wind just stopped. And so I shot a little bit behind him. And so I reloaded, and then they didn't really know what happened, so he was with a couple of youths, and so they just kind of did a little like loop, and then he was standing right back where he was, and so I didn't hold for any wind, and so I shot, and it was so cool because it was so cold you could see the vapor trail, and so the slow motion video of that my shot is you just see the vapor trail, and then you just see him drop, and
oh my goodness,
he dropped a couple feet before he would have fallen off the edge, and it was amazing, but it was kind of cool because, like, my adrenaline was, like, pumping, and so I didn't have a glove on because I didn't want to shoot with a glove on. So my left hand was nice and warm with my gloves. My right hand was honestly fine. And then after I saw my ram go down, my right hand just went numb. Mm-hmm. Like, I would not have been able to shoot another shot, but it was crazy.
How far was that shot, did you already say?
It was like
Wasn't it 470 or something?
No, it was like 425, I think. 425,
Good for you.
430.
So now you got two
So now I
down.
had 2. Mm-hmm.
And you have a desert hunt coming up.
2
That was
weeks.
November, so it was
2 weeks
very
out.
quickly you had another one coming.
Yeah.
How was your health at this point in time? You were really good going into the July hunt. In November, were you able to maintain that lung function, or did
My lung function had basically stayed the same, but I hadn't been training as hard as I was for that July hunt because we had cars. I wouldn't be hiking as much. But I was still like kind of training, and so I managed to keep my lung function. It didn't like drop significantly. It was around the same, around 65, which is kind of like my baseline. So we went out for New Mexico. My dad and I, we drove out there. And obviously, like, I have school, so we had, 3 days to hunt maybe? Like 3 or 4 days to hunt. So we drove out there, and we met up with the Taps, and they drove in from Oklahoma, them and Cooper. So we met up, and then we, went out and just started looking around to see what we could see and stuff. It's pretty cool.
And that was with Mike Miller on the Armandaris, and saw lots of sheep. You saw one the first day that we made a stalk
yeah,
on
we
and got
stalked
in
up on
close
him.
and thought we could do a little bit better and passed him, 180 yards or something. It was very close.
Yeah, it was pretty close. We were just, sitting there staring at him. I'm like, he's right there. But no, we just passed on him, and then it kind of freaked me out because, it's over now. But so my first hunt was 1 day, my second hunt was 2 days, my third hunt was 3 days. So I kind of had the thoughts of my fourth hunt would be 4 days. But on the second day of my desert hunt, we did not see, any sheep.
so it was one of those
virtually at
days
all. It
where
was
you're
just,
like, oh boy, what did I do passing that ram?
So it was kind of like, we're screwed. I'm like, I have to go back to school, and we're not seeing any rams, let alone a legal ram. So I was like, I was really worried that I wasn't going to be able to shoot a ram. But then the third day, we were just driving around, and one of the guys with us, he had spotted one, so we met up with them, and we got on my ram and shot him at 350 or something like that.
Nice.
That was a
awesome.
great shot.
So now you have your desert down.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point in time, are you starting to realize that I'm going to get this done?
It was crazy. It just started slowly yet super fast, came in reality. I was like, I only have one left. And it happened in so little time. I did not expect it to happen that fast at all. And so it was in awe. This is insane. I did not believe it. I was like, I only have one left. This is crazy. So I was kind of I'm like, when's the shoe gonna drop? When's something gonna happen? What's gonna go wrong? I'm like, I only have one left. This can't be happening the whole time. And so I was gonna go for stone in August of 20.
So this is November, and then
In
what
November.
happens in January?
Sheep show.
Gray Thornton from Wild Sheep Foundation invites you to give a speech at the convention the same night that you heard Kirsty speak the year before. So, and you wound up being on the cover of the Wild Sheep magazine, which was just a tremendous honor that they put your picture on there, and things started to fall in place for you.
It was
getting-
insane.
Gave an amazing speech, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Were you nervous when you did that in front of
I was really
1,800
nervous.
people?
You
No
didn't
one
seem
believed
like
me. Yeah, no one believes me. But I was really nervous, and I had given a speech at the CF Gala before, but it was more CF oriented because of the audience. And so this one was about my hunt and about my journey. And I was so nervous. I was sitting at dinner, and it's a nice dinner, and I could not eat. I was staring off into space, running through all my bullet points in my head. And everyone's like, Jen, you're going to be fine. Stop freaking out. You're going to do great. And so then I finally got up there, and I gave my speech, and I came back down, and they were like, are you kidding me? They were like, you were acting like you were so nervous. And they're like, were you just messing with us? I was like, no, I was genuinely so nervous. But, yeah, they kind of made fun of me because I acted so nervous before. But I was really nervous.
Man, when you got to the podium, it was just amazing, just ice cold, just delivered it awesome. And I'll note you're also speaking again this coming week at the Wild Sheep Foundation on Friday night as well.
Yes.
So anybody out there listening, if you're at the Friday dinner, you're going to get to hear Miss Jen speak again. And I'm excited. I'll be there, and I'll be the one in the back heckling you.
Yeah, I'm nervous. I kind of feel bad. So if anyone listening sitting in the front row, I promise I'm not trying to stare at you, but I always I get stuck on one group of people, or it happened to be one table that was right in front of the podium, and I was looking at them the whole time, and I felt
And
bad.
they're doing this at you.
Yeah.
Luckily, it's people I didn't know, because if it was people I knew, they probably would have been messing with me. But I felt bad because I felt like they thought I was staring at them. So every once in a while, I'd like look up and look around, but I kind of get like focused on one area, and I kind of get stuck there, and I kind of felt bad. I'm like, I'm not staring at you, I promise. I just kind of like, you're in my line of vision right there.
Well,
That's a
I think
good way of doing it, really.
anything
Yeah.
you can do when you're public speaking to, stay on task and keep your focus, I think it's important. And
Yeah.
I've seen the video and listened to the audio, and you knocked it out of the park, and I'm sure you'll do the same this Friday coming up.
It's kind of easy because it's my story, so it comes from my heart. So
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to talk about.
Yeah. So now we're chasing after number 4.
And so what happened with that, Jay, is she didn't mention it, but the North Dakota hunt, when she laid in the snow for 45 minutes, that night was a horrible night for her.
I'll bet.
She couldn't breathe. She was coughing. She was wheezing. We had electricity. We were in a cabin, so she did nebulizer treatments several times that night. And that really got me concerned, thinking, well, I was planning to take her to Gundahoo to hunt for stone sheep. But those horseback hunts can be brutal. It took me 21 days to get my stone sheep. And I was thinking, man, if she has those kind of problems there, we could be in real trouble. So I started thinking about a fannin as an opportunity instead of a stone.
Sure.
And we decided to book it with Raven's Throat. So we had the helicopter option again.
Good.
And no horses, yeah.
I kind of want to get a stone, but we'll see how that goes. Stones are they're so pretty, and I really want one.
So you booked with Raven's Throat and went after a fannin. So that would have been the next summer?
So the first hunt, my doll was the first week opening day, and then my second hunt was the first week opening day. So I ended up getting the same slot, and it ended up being really cool because I got my ram the first day that I hunted, which happened because we waited a day to go out. So it was a second day of season, but it was 366 days later, which was
That's so
it
cool.
was so cool. But yeah, luckily Grizz and Ginger, mainly Grizz, went in the helicopter, and he was scouting looking for a fannin for me, and so he found one. So they had eyes on one, and they had eyes on a couple, and they had lost one. The weather changed, and he's like, we haven't seen it since, but they still had eyes on a really good one. So that's where they put us. But in the months before training for that hunt, I had gotten on the new clinical. Was I on the new clinical trial then? No, I wasn't. Just kidding. I got a new vest. And so we had been training a lot, and I got a new vest and a combination of other things. So my lung function went up to 72%.
Wow.
So it was crazy. So I was like,
So you were
okay.
feeling good.
I was feeling really good, and I was like, I am ready.
And you'd worked out and kept your
I
physical
trained really
strength.
hard, and so I was like, all right, I am ready. I have one sheep left. I got 72% lung function. And I had in my head that it was going to be 4 days because every other ram was one in the cemetery. So I was kind of like, all right, that's going to be 4 days. And my dad's like, this is probably going to be our hardest hunt. I was like, all right, I am ready. I prepared as much as I can. So I was really excited and really ready for it. And then we got out, and it was really cool because David, for his graduation present, he got a caribou and doll sheep hunt. So he was coming the week after I was. So we were going to, I knew no matter what, I was going to stay up at camp for the whole 10 days or whatever it was. And so we were going to meet David, and then we were going to switch backpacks, say hi and bye, and then head off. So it was really exciting because we all kind of were going on that whole journey together, and David and I were all right, it was really awesome
That
to
is
share that
cool.
with him. And so we were kind of training, and then that more competition, kind of both had our sheep hunts and stuff. So that was awesome. And then so then we went out first, and because they were still looking for that fannin, I went out not the day we got there, but opening day of the season. And so we got in that first day, and then the first day we got in, they kind of hiked out to scout a little bit, and they saw the rams. And so the next day, which the first day I could hunt, we hiked down and around, and we had to hike kind of just different ways so they wouldn't see us. And we didn't know exactly where they were, but we had an assumption of where they were. And so we hiked down and around, and we camped high, so luckily we had to hike down there. And then we finally got eyes on them. Grizz had to hike up a little bit more, and then he finally got eyes on them. So after we had taken a break and I took a nap like I usually do, we hiked down the saddle a little bit, and then we got over, and we had eyes on that one ram, and all we needed to see was that gray tail. And so
Great tail, you said.
Yeah. Did I say gray tail?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we just needed to see that gray tail. So we hiked over this ridge, and I think it was Lincoln, and he just starts whistling at us, and there were these 2 white dots, and so we just dropped. And I got behind my gun, and then James gave us he's like, no, not a gray tail. And so we're like, okay. So those rams went straight down and straight back up. So luckily, like, they kind of got spooked by us, I think. And luckily they didn't spook the Fannin because that Fannin would have been gone. But so we kind of tried to follow those rams to find the Fannin and stuff. So then we hiked down, and then we're like, okay, we see the ram. It's like 550 maybe. So we try and get as close as we could. And it was like, it wasn't shale, but it was like pretty big rocks, and they were kind of sharp. And so like trying to hike across that was a little rough. And we got in as close as we could, and it was around 500, I think 8 yards. And so I was like, okay, like this is the best. Like I can't shoot any, I can't get any closer. But I'd practiced, obviously, like I practiced with Pat Scroggin at 1300 and like 800 and
this
things
was
like that.
the Gunworks gun.
In my Gunworks rifle, yes. So I was really confident, and I had been practicing a lot. So I was like, okay, like I can make this shot. So we set up, and I was kind of in an odd position because I couldn't get prone because the hill was really steep and we were on the rocks and everything. So I was kind of laying like parallel to the ground, perpendicular to my gun. It looked, I'm sure it did look really uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah. When you were landing on these rocks that were real jagged, it looked
Yeah,
like it was
it looked really uncomfortable, but it was,
So you were able to tuck in behind the gun, though, even
Yeah.
though you were laying to the side?
yeah, it was a really weird position, but I got in and I got to where I was really comfortable and steady, and I was like, okay, like I can do it. Like, I'm steady as I'm ever going to be. So we got on him, but then he started walking closer to us. I was like, okay, so we're going to wait. So then I waited a little bit for him to come closer, and he got to around like 480. And so then we shot him, and then when he dropped, I just lost it. I just started crying, and I couldn't believe it. And I didn't want to move. I'm like, I can see him in my scope. I'm like, I don't want to move. He can't move. And so finally, like, we got up, and I was in awe. I couldn't believe it. And so we got up, and we had to hike across these rocks, and I was like kind of shaky and like nervous, and it took me forever to get across those rocks, and I fell a bunch of times. I ripped my down jacket, which was really
like
sad.
Everything, your knees were shaking.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
And so I fell a couple times. I hit my knee. But I let people forget it on like Lincoln. But yeah, I hit my knee on some rocks, and but I didn't care. I was like, I don't care. I just need to get to that sheep. And so I saw the white dot, and then I kind of went down this little bit, and then I went up, and he was just like right there. I was like, this is insane. And so I just went up to him, and then, saw the gray tail, and he had like gray under his arms and everything, and gray in his face, and I was like, this is just, it was amazing. Then everyone came down, we were all high-fiving and everything. It was awesome. And then I started crying again.
So that was number 4, and you completed it.
Mm-hmm.
So 366 days.
Yep, 7 days of hunting, like 1,700 yards of shooting and stuff.
That's awesome.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
And what a difference for her, Jay. So at the end of that deal, it was kind of a rugged hike back. It was about 7 or 8 miles, I think, back to camp and over big boulders and real nasty terrain.
And it just started raining when we left, so we had to like hike up those big boulders in like the rain, and I was
slick boulders.
Mm-hmm.
So you got the true experience.
Yeah, and that one day it was kind of cool. We like stopped at like the river, we got some water, and then like we looked up and like, oh crap, we gotta go. So then we packed up and we're like, all right, we gotta go up this. And obviously everyone was carrying my stuff for me, but like Griegos and my dad were carrying my ram, and some other guys were carrying my ram, but I was like, all right, let's go. And so I was in the front with Lincoln and Jim and Cooper, and we were all up there, and I was the first one back at camp. Just saying.
What a transformation to go from 51% lung function to sprinting to camp after an 8-mile hike to finish her Grand Slam and beats Lincoln to the tents, back to our tent to finish the thing. It was just tremendous transformation for her.
That's awesome.
That's incredible. You mentioned Lincoln a bunch. From what I understand, they filmed all 4 hunts, and from what I understand, they're going to be airing it sometime coming up on the Outdoor Channel. We don't know all the specifics yet.
Yeah, they were great. They were there that night when this whole journey started, and they were like, we want to be there for the rest of it. So they were awesome. Yeah, Jim, Lincoln, and Cooper were all there, and they filmed each hunt, and the special bond with them has been great. And it's going to air on the Outdoor Channel. We're not sure when, and we're not sure whether it's going to be like a 3-part series or one whole thing, but we'll know like more details soon. But it's going to air, and it's going to be really awesome.
What's the name of it, Jen?
It's called Undefined.
Awesome. Can't wait for that.
And maybe we can give you, Jay, the teaser video if you want to have a link on your...
Yeah, I'll promote it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Something else to note, this week at the Wild Sheep Foundation, there has also been a hunt that's donated. Bob, you guys can talk a little bit about that, and they're going to auction it off, and the money's going to go to CF. Let's do our best to try and promote that. Tell us what's going on that hunt.
That's great. So I took David to Argentina last year for his fall break, and we hunted at Los Laurales Lodge in Argentina. And the owner of that, John Renault, really nice guy. He was asking about the family and what we do, and I mentioned the hunting, and I mentioned Jennifer, and he went online and watched her video of her speech, and he said, well, I'd like to do something for cystic fibrosis. I'd like to donate a hunt for 4 people, a cast and blast for golden dorado and doves at his place, and that I think that'll be for this year, but he set up that 70% of that money will go to CF, and it's going to be awesome. So right after her speech in Reno, they're going to auction that off live on stage, and hopefully it can generate some money for CF research. So very, very grateful to John, and also to Gray Thornton and everybody at Wild Chief for letting us do that.
Yeah, for sure.
For
It's
sure.
gonna be
And
great.
any listeners out there listening that want to bid on that hunt, you can send me a direct message on my Instagram or send me an email at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. I'll make sure to get you hooked up so you can bid on that. And let's try and blow the doors off this and raise a bunch of money for CF. So here you are. So here I was,
So there I was.
17 years old,
Yep.
junior in high school,
Yes.
and you completed your Grand Slam. And since then, since you completed your Grand Slam, you've actually been fortunate to shoot another sheep. So now
Yes.
you've shot a giant desert sheep.
Yes. That was amazing.
And so now you have 5 under your belt. From all that you've accomplished, is there a sense of satisfaction that, okay, I've completed that? Does it allow you to kind of sit back and reflect on it, or does it create a situation where is there something else you want to do as far as I want to do whatever, or do you have your sights set on other goals, or where are you at in your personal quest?
Well, the Grand Slam was kind of like the top of the top. Like
Yeah,
if
I
I
mean,
get
how do you-
that,
yeah.
like I'm done.
Yeah.
So to finish it in a year and to be done by 17, I'm still kind of like I don't really know what I want to do next, because that was the farthest I was looking ahead was Grand Slam, and so everyone's like, well, what are you going to do next? I'm kind of like, well, I don't really know, because that was what I wanted to do the most, and so I kind of just want to focus on just like working on the little things instead of having a giant thing in mind. But I learned a lot through the whole journey, and I learned mostly that CF doesn't define who I am, and it doesn't set my limits for me. While it prohibits, like it pushes back, but I can push even harder. So, if anything comes up, I know that I can work. If I work hard for it, that I can do it. But right now, I'm just kind of, I don't know, basking in the glory of finishing, I guess. I'm just kind of in awe of it still, and so I don't have like one giant goal in mind, but anything that does come up, I know that I can work hard and achieve it.
That's awesome. It's an inspiration for me, and I know it's been an inspiration for your parents to watch you battle through some of the things that you've done, and it hasn't been easy.
Yeah.
Right?
It was, it seemed easier than I thought. I mean, looking back at it now, it seemed easier than I thought, but like in the moment, it was a lot of work to get there.
Yeah. So
I would like to thank Brian Rimza and Nicole Rimza, who gave her that desert sheep tag. His sister drew it, and through the Outdoor Experience for All and Eddie Corona and Chris Denham, she was able to get that desert sheep tag. And that's something that I think that you've mentioned on your podcast before for people, that if you draw a tag in Arizona and you can't do the hunt, and if you have point guard, you can keep your points and donate it to a sick child or a wounded warrior's kid or wounded warrior, and they can get out and experience the outdoors. So.
Yeah, it's amazing to be able to see that. Obviously, I belong to Outdoor Experience for All, and I've gotten a lot of hunts through them, and I've met a lot of kids who did that as well, and it's amazing just to go on hunts with them and to see them going their own hunts and their own journeys. Is amazing to see.
yeah, such an awesome organization, and hats off, to the Arizona Game and Fish for allowing something like that so that kids and wounded warriors and other people can enjoy those experiences, and then to have groups like Eddie Corona and Outdoor Experience for All is just amazing. I want to commend you on, of course, your accomplishment, but I want to commend you on the person that you are.
Oh, thank you.
And it makes me pretty emotional to see how incredible of a person that you are, first and foremost, but to be able to shoot the Grand Slam of sheep and now have 5 is an amazing accomplishment for any person, but someone certainly under, the age of 17, and to face the challenges that you've faced, it's enough to make anybody believe that they can do anything if you set your mind to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
And I just wanted to give you guys an opportunity to, maybe concluding thoughts or anything that, you want to say that maybe we didn't cover, or, if you have, anything you want to say to anybody out there as far as, you can do anything you set your mind to, or whatever. I'll open it up to you guys.
Well, I think watching Jennifer tackle this challenge has been so rewarding as a parent, and to have Bob lead the way and giving her the confidence that, don't worry, I got your back. And just like the Wounded Warriors, just like, your faith in God, when you know that somebody's looking over you, the sky's the limit. And watching Bob know that he's got her back, and we'll prepare her as much as possible. But it's up to Jennifer to face her fear.
Sure.
And you can't teach that.
Sure.
You can't force that. That has to be within the person. And for Jennifer to be a young person, already realizing the challenges that she has and she lives with every day, and the fear of the unknown, fear of pushing it too hard, fear of failure, just fear of challenge.
Sure.
Life is easy, but to actually welcome the challenge, facing the fear, and accomplishing something like she did is something so rewarding as a parent. And her story translates really well to life, because you don't have to be a hunter, fisherman, or any outdoorsman. You can be just a normal human being on the face of the earth, and realize that we all have fears, we all have challenges and limitations. And to just pick out something in your life that might be easy for someone else is something very hard for you, doesn't mean you can't try. And success is in the effort. And I think Jennifer's a great example of that, and I couldn't be any more proud to be her mom and to be a partner in Bob, his efforts in making this dream happen with Jennifer. So it's been great.
And we've got two other great kids that aren't getting all the airtime with David and Timmy. They've been very supportive of Jennifer, and so many people were so supportive of her through this, whether it was Jim Windham at Kennetrek, or the Wilderness Athlete people, or Wild Sheep Federation, Gunworks, Rocky Mountain Precision, just so many people that really helped her and inspired her. It was great. And Jay, you're asking what she has next. I'm really pushing for 4 North American wild prairie dogs. They're a lot cheaper than before.
Yeah.
They're readily available. The airfare is easier to get around for those, so maybe she can set that as a goal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been pushing that for a little bit.
That's awesome. Prairie dogs, or go turkey hunting with Jay.
Yeah, exactly.
We're looking forward to doing that, too.
I look over there and I see the poster, The Climb, and I see Jennifer. It's that's 2017 photo, and there you are with your backpack, and you've got your trekking poles, and I would assume that photo was probably taken on the first hunt.
Yep.
At Raven's Throat. And like you said, Carol, there's not much more we could say after you summed it up. It's basically a mic drop. You nailed it perfectly. But everybody in life faces challenges, and Jennifer's story is just a testimony that you can face those head on, and you can accomplish anything you set your mind to. So I can't wait to see the blessings that God has for you in the future. And for me, the amazing thing that you can relate to so many people with your story, because there's people that struggle with lots of different things. And it's just an inspiration. It's been a blessing to have you guys here on the podcast, and I value all of you guys' friendship, and it's going to be awesome to see you knock it out of the park on Friday, give your speech, and
Crap, it's already less than a week away.
Get your award, so you better start taking some notes and get it figured out. But I know you're going to do a great job, and I look forward to many more fun things that we'll do in the future. And
like game nights and turkey hunts.
Yeah, that's right. It's awesome. So God bless you guys, the Griego family. You're an awesome group.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Jay, for
much.
this opportunity. It's been a lot of fun for us to relive it with other people, and we're just appreciative that we have the platform to do it, and thanks for asking us to share our story.
Yeah, it's been wonderful.
Yeah, it's awesome. And if anybody out there listening, let's fight this CF. And if you want any additional information, please send me an email, and I will put you in touch with all the right people if you want to make a donation. And let's fight this. And we've already come a long ways. Carol said that they've come a long ways, and I believe we can come further. So if it's on your heart to do something, please contact me, and we'll make it happen. So, guys,
Thank you,
thanks.
Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jay.